Okay, thank you very much everyone for joining us here today. We'll be speaking with a couple of guys from Epsagon to recap some of the announcements from reInvent just a couple of weeks ago. So before we start, I just want to go through some introductions of everyone that's on the call today. We have Ran Ribbensaft, who's the CTO of Epsagon. We have Hen Peretz, the software engineer from Epsagon. You also have Matt Martinez, Cloud Content and Labs QA engineer from here at Cloud Academy, and myself, Stuart Scott, and I'm the content and security lead here at Cloud Academy. So thanks very much everyone for joining.
Yeah, our pleasure to join as well. I think reInvent this year has been very magnificent. Lots of cool features. I think each one is in his own field, but you know, let's review them one by one.
We'll try and get through as many as we can, at least. Okay, so here is our agenda for today. As you can see, there's about 30 or so different announcements that we're going to run through, covering lots of different categories such as database, compute, security, machine learning, analytics, etc. So there's quite a lot to get through here today. So I'm just going to kick off straight away, and I think we're going to start with database announcements and services. So as we go through this, each one of us will talk about one of the announcements on screen, and then it will pass on to another announcement. So let's start with the Amazon managed Apache Cassandra service.
Yes, perfect. So the Amazon managed Apache Cassandra service, I think is just an exciting announcement, and I didn't really expect that, simply because I'm keeping also with a lot of people that you know, trying to do the migration to AWS, and you know how hard it is to actually move your database or do any configuration with the database. It's sort of like a pain point most company has. So Amazon, what they did is that they just built their serverless Apache Cassandra compatible database service. It's basically, if you think about it, it's just similar as DynamoDB in terms of the NoSQL. And what it means for people is that they don't need to actually change anything in how they work through Cassandra. It's all compatible. So I think it's pretty nice, and it can help people to migrate a lot faster. The second announcement on the databases is the Amazon RDS proxy. What it basically means is that there is now a database proxy which is fully managed by Amazon and gives you access to the RDS. So for those of you who have been using RDS like with Lambda functions, you know that Lambda functions are ephemeral. So if you need to be able to talk with your RDS, you're going to start creating connections and monitor them and sort of like putting that in the container state. And this is sort of a bad practice because you keep constantly monitoring connections. So using the RDS proxy just eliminates that need, and I think it's very wonderful to have the ability to use that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Now we're going to move on to some of the AWS compute services. I'm going to start with AWS Outpost. And this service is all about hybrid functionality. It helps you to align your applications and infrastructure from your on-premises environment with that of the AWS cloud. And this was actually announced the previous year's reInvent, but it's now generally available. So this is available for us to use now. So what AWS Outpost allows us to do is essentially bring the AWS cloud to your own data center. And it uses the very same hardware as AWS uses. So by bringing in AWS hardware to your data center, it allows you to use native AWS services, including the same tools and APIs as you would when running your infrastructure within AWS itself. The difference being is that the hardware and services will be running locally to help you maintain latency and compliance for local applications and workloads. And to use and organize AWS Outposts for your use in your data center, you can simply order them through the AWS Management Console. And here you have the option of selecting different compute and storage options that are available. And depending on how much hardware you need, you can simply order a single server if you need just a single server, or variants of rack sizes, including a quarter rack, half rack, or even a full size rack of equipment. From a technical perspective, there's a wide number of EC2 instances available, as well as storage options for EBS volumes and local instance storage. And Outpost also allows you to run services such as EC2, ECS, EBS, EKS, RDS, and EMR. And there's going to be many more to come as well. And one final point on Outpost before I move on is that the service itself is fully managed. And this means that you do not need to maintain any kind of level of patch management across your infrastructure. AWS will ensure the infrastructure is patched as and when needed. The second compute announcement is AWS Compute Optimizer. Now, excuse me, there are two main goals of the AWS Compute Optimizer, and these being both to optimize performance and costs across your compute infrastructure running in AWS. The service itself is backed by machine learning to help identify patterns and historical data to better recommend alternate compute instances, which there are now over 140 choices to choose from. So it can sometimes be pretty difficult to get this right the first time. And by using the Compute Optimizer, it will prevent you from underutilizing resources, leading to an increased cost on your behalf, or overutilizing resources, which will of course lead to performance and other potential issues going forward. The service will use 14 days worth of historical data from Amazon CloudWatch and will look at CPU utilization, memory utilization, and network I/O metrics to help the service determine its recommendations by using this data. Now, when the service generates its recommendations, it will display which instances are under provisioned, over provisioned, and which ones are optimized as they should be. Of the instances that are recommended, Compute Optimizer will provide 3 different options, and this allows you to see graphically a comparison against your current instance type, allowing you to determine the best option available to you. So you still have some flexibility on the final choice you make if you would like to change the instance type. Again, this service comes free. There's no additional cost to using this. You simply have to opt into the service for it to start collecting data. And if your account is a part of an organization, then you can configure all your member accounts to be set up for Compute Optimizer at the same time, which is great. Next, we have EC2 Image Builder. And as the name implies, it's used to help manage your library of images used across your compute resources. Now, many people and organizations might have tens, hundreds, or even more images used across their fleet of EC2 instances. So having a new service that is designed to help simplify the whole process through automation is great news to many organizations. And EC2 Image Builder provides a simplified method of creating, managing, and deploying your images both within AWS. So these will be your AMI images that you use, and also images used on premise if you are using MS Hyper-V or VMware vMsphere or any open virtualization format. Now, when you start using EC2 Image Builder, it follows a set process via a pipeline. Firstly, you need to create a recipe, and this will define the chosen source image and any components to be installed or configured on that image during the build, in addition to any tests that you might want to take place. And then once you have your recipe defined, you need to create a pipeline. And this has an associated IAM role, which has access to create instances with your build, in addition to perform any tests that you might have defined within the recipe. Now, importantly, the pipeline also allows you to schedule how often a new image is created. So if you want to ensure that your images contain the latest security updates and patches, then you can configure it to build a new image from the recipe every single day if required, or every week, or a particular day a month. So you can configure it as you see fit. And it can build a new image from the recipe every day, which is, if security is a high factor, then I would recommend that. And if you want to use this same image, or a golden image, as it's sometimes referred to, across multiple regions, then EC2 Image Builder will allow you to select which regions this is required for distribution. Just one final note on EC2 Image Builder, that it only currently supports Amazon Linux 2 and Windows Server 2012, 2016, and 2019. And again, this service is offered at no additional cost. Next, we have AWS Wavelength. Now, this is currently in preview, so it's not yet generally available. However, this service has been set up to provide ultra-low latency down to the single-digit millisecond for applications developed on mobile devices using the 5G network. Now, these super low latencies are ideal for gaming applications or where live streaming might be required, as well as applications that provide augmented and virtual reality, which is becoming more and more popular as a technology in the industry as we know it. Now, essentially, wavelengths consist of AWS infrastructure, which is deployed right at the edge of the telecoms provider's 5G network, typically within the provider's data center itself. And this is what helps to maintain the ultra-low latency that's required. Now, this infrastructure deployments are called wavelength zones. So all you then need to do is to connect your VPC to these wavelength zones in the required region, and then you're able to use common AWS services such as EC2, EBS, EKS, IAM, etc., to enable you to build your applications. And the elements of your application that need to take advantage of the ultra-low latency can be deployed in the wavelength zone right at the edge of the network. Now, going forward, wavelength will be incorporated by telecommunication providers such as Verizon, Vodafone, KDDI, and SK Telecom, and will be made available in Europe, the US, Japan, and Korea.
This one, I think, is a pretty big one. It's provision concurrency for AWS Lambda. And I think if you're doing Lambda, you always heard the term cold start, the fact that you get a new instance initialized to handle your request. Now, AWS pulled the sleeve and said, from now on, you can provision your own concurrency number of instances, or also known as hyper-ready. It means there is a reserved, or not reserved, a ready instance that's ready to accept incoming requests. You can define as many as you want, as long as your limit of the amount of requests. And then it means that invocation time handling will be reduced drastically. This is obviously, I wouldn't recommend for anyone to do that because it also incurs some additional pricing because you got this already warmed up. But in cases where performance is a critical issue, or you want to ensure a very low latency of Lambda function initialization, this is a great scenario. Also worth mentioning that you don't need to change any code whatsoever. It's just a configuration update that you can set on your function, and you're just starting to run with it.
Okay, now onto storage. Starting with S3 access points. Now, S3 has a new security feature, and this being the access points. And this has been designed to be a new way of securing buckets at scale, while at the same time adding simplification of management to bucket permissions. There are, of course, already a number of security features for S3 that are used to help control access to buckets, such as bucket policies. However, with S3 access points, you now have the ability to configure and set up different access permissions against the shared set of data stored on S3 using multiple access points. And this prevents you from having to manage a single large bucket policy that might contain tens or even hundreds of different statements. And this can get quite complicated over time. Instead, you simply create a different access point for each user, group, service, or application that needs to access that bucket. So for example, let's assume you have a VPC with a group of IAM users who require full access to objects in the bucket. In addition to this, you might have objects in the same bucket will need read-only access from anywhere on the internet. Plus you might have an application that needs access to the objects in that bucket as well. Now you could configure a bucket policy with a number of different statements to help facilitate and manage those access privileges. But with access points, you would simply set up a separate access point with a permission policy for each resource requiring access. Also, as an additional level of security, you can select to restrict access to the access point to originate from a request within a specific VPC or from the internet. It's also important to point out that the actions that can be applied with the policies associated with the access points can only relate to objects within the bucket and not the bucket itself. So you wouldn't be able to add an operation of delete bucket, for example. Next, we have Access Analyzer for S3. And this is ideal. This is ideal for those who need a helping hand understanding just what their S3 policies and access control lists are allowing from the outside of your AWS account. So when you first enable the service from within IAM, the S3 Access Analyzer will automatically appear within your S3 console, and you can review your policies and identify any that might be overly permissive for you to review. And this enables you to spot and identify any loopholes of access that you may not have been aware of, allowing you to quickly respond to and remediate the access permission problem. You'll be notified if your bucket has open access to the internet or if it is shared with another AWS account. And when you review your findings, you can either carry out the corrective steps to secure the bucket as it should be, or simply accept the findings if the security is indeed correctly set. Now, as your number of S3 buckets grow, having a security feature such as this to keep tabs of any potential security risk is a much needed and welcomed addition to S3. All too often have we seen the result of overly permissive bucket permissions being set, much to the detriment of organizations who own that bucket and often the customers who have been affected by a data breach. Again, this is another free offering by AWS and it's very simple to implement. Now on to machine learning.
Yeah, so this one is for Amplify. It actually falls, in between so many categories because this one is relevant for machine learning, mobile, for analytics, for authentication, and so on. For those of you who don't know, Amplify is an SDK that wraps GraphQL and other AWS services in a single place where you can build almost a complete application without handling any resource, any service. All is abstracted through this SDK. So far, Amplify supported only web and React Native libraries, and now again AWS helps us to take it one step forward towards mobile. So now for iOS and Android, you'll be able to integrate Amplify SDK. As I mentioned, it really allows faster development because you got built in all the needed features like authentication using Cognito and analytics using the AWS Analytics services. AI and machine learning are also included. Any API call using GraphQL and DynamoDBs are also in place, and storage. It's a real-time offering that you can, just plug into your AWS account, start coding through some of the SDK libraries, and you get a fully featured service, and now also on your mobile that includes both iOS and Android.
Hi, this is Matt Martinez. So the next feature we have here is Contact Lens for Amazon Connect. Of course, Amazon Connect is AWS's contact center solution. So what is Contact Lens? It's a set of machine learning analytics capabilities for Amazon Connect, including things like automatic transcribing, sentiment analysis on conversations, and enhanced contact search based on things like keywords and phrases. So what does this mean for you? It allows you the ability to understand the sentiments and trends of your customer conversations, which will lead to identifying crucial customer feedback and improving your customer service overall. Right now, this feature is in preview. Next, we have SageMaker Studio. So SageMaker Studio is an IDE or integrated development environment for machine learning built on SageMaker. So what this gives you is a web-based interface where you can perform all kinds of different machine learning development steps. It gives you a centralized location to build, train, and deploy your models, as well as adjust your experiments, compare your model results, and plenty more. So the benefits here are it gives you easy setup of kind of this consolidated machine learning environment. Excuse me. So you'll be able to easily deploy all of your machine learning tools, such as your coding, your visualization, your debugging, your monitoring, and more. And then because you're focused less on building that machine learning pipeline and it's all consolidated for you, that of course will lead to faster iteration of your models. Right now that's available in Ohio. Next we have SageMaker Autopilot, which is a new feature that will automatically train and tune your machine learning models. And the way this does this is by finding the best combination of data pre-processing steps and then creates your optimal classification and regression machine learning models for you. And then finally, that'll generate some Python code showing you exactly how your data was pre-processed so that you can use and tweak that on your own if you need to. Some benefits here are it saves you a lot of time because you're not spending any time tweaking your algorithms or cleaning or pre-processing your own data, or at least you'll be doing it a lot less. And then you'll also get a lot higher quality for your models with hopefully the need to scale up a lot less to get there as well. and that is GA right now. That is available all over. Next, we have SageMaker Model Monitor, which is a new feature that will monitor your production machine learning models for deviations. And this will do this by inspecting your collected data and prediction quality, and outputs reports straight to an S3 bucket for you. Model Monitor will also output per feature metrics to CloudWatch, where you can set up your own alerts and dashboards to track whatever is most important to you. So benefits here are, it'll alert you when you need to take action. So if there's any remedial action you need to take, you'll learn that from Model Monitor. And then, of course, you're going to spend a lot less time troubleshooting, because you're going to get those kind of canary in the coal mine situations where Model Monitor is going to give you that info right off the bat. And then, of course, because a lot of this troubleshooting is done for you, it greatly lowers the skill barrier needed to be able to tune and monitor these models. That's also generally available right now. Next, we have SageMaker Debugger, which is a new service that will grant insights into your machine learning model training. And it does this by periodically saving your internal model states, including parameters learned by your model, scalar values, output of each of your layers, and a few more as well. And then it'll apply rules to SageMaker Debugger based on declarations you've made in Python code. You can make your own, and there are pre-built rules available right now as well for some of the most common problems you might run into, like vanishing tensors, vanishing gradients, and several others. So benefits here, of course, you're going to capture your training data in real time with no code changes needed, or few code changes needed based on those rules. You're going to get alerts when remedial action is needed. And then, of course, because a lot of this is getting debugged on the back end for you, you're going to potentially reduce your debug time from days down to potentially minutes. This one's also generally available. And last one here we have is Amazon CoGuru, which is a new AWS developer tool, also powered by machine learning. So CoGuru is going to give you a few things, including automatic inspection of your source code. And then it'll also run continually in production so that it's tackling code quality from a few different angles. So benefits here. It's going to automate your code reviews based on millions of lines of Java code written by other developers, and it's going to give you just a wide range of tips on how to improve your code, how to avoid potential issues, and so on. And then once your code is deployed, it'll also run continually in production, and it'll identify problem lines of code for you, including resource-intensive lines of code that is likely to break, and it'll give you very detailed analysis and actually suggested fixes as well. So you'll get those intelligent recommendations for code fixes and improvements. Right now, it only supports Java projects, but they have other languages in the works. So it's in preview for Java only at the moment.
Okay, moving on from machine learning, let's take a look at the analytics announcements.
Yeah, so we have pretty exciting announcements from the analytics. I'll start with the ultra warm for Amazon Elasticsearch service. This is a feature I'm gonna use probably this as soon as I can. Since what they did here is that they when you work with Elasticsearch, so it's a very efficient way to index your data and do some very fast searches. And the thing when it starts to become a pain is when you need to have and store a lot of data. Then it becomes much more expensive, because the way Elasticsearch works right now, that you need for each instance, you can only allocate a couple of gigabytes per instance. So if you want to scale up, you're gonna need to buy more instances. And this is exactly where they try to decouple the different types of services from the storage. They're also gonna do it next with the Redshift. And here with the Elasticsearch, the ultra warm is just the ability to store up to 10 petabytes of data in a single cluster, and it's all going to be saved on S3. And how they do it is that the ultra warm is a way that they can not only save money on the actual storage of the data, but also once you want to actually access that from the Elasticsearch service, it's going to be pretty seamless, since it's going to be warmed up already by in the background by Amazon. It's a pretty nice feature. for Amazon to allow you to get some very low cost and scalable storage, and also keep the fast pace of Elasticsearch service. The next one, the couple of next ones actually very huge improvements of Redshift. I think in this reInvent, they really focused on how you can optimize Redshift and how we can use this data warehouse at scale, and also not worry about the cost. They started off with introducing the RA3 instances. So this is basically instances that eliminate the coupling that you had between storage and compute. So previously, if you wanted to scale up similar to what you did with what you will have done with Elastic, is that if you want to scale up, you also need scale up in terms of storage. You also need to buy more compute. And if you need to buy more compute and you don't really need to use it, then you're paying for things that you're not really using. So RA3 is not only improving that way, you can also automatically scale, and it supports workloads of up to 8 petabytes. It also improved the performance and storage by 2x, which is incredible. And it's just a way, to optimize your cost and not be able to think about storage and compute and think about them separately if you want to support that specific use case. And when we think about what they did here with separating the storages, then at the end of the day, if you're gonna have more storage available to allocate and more compute, sometime you're gonna need to have a better approach in actually doing queries. So this announcement of Aqua, I think, is a very incredible one, since they changed the way that you actually run queries. So today, to run a query on your Redshift, you will need to take the storage and move it on the network through your compute power, and then that compute power will do all the queries. And with the Aqua, the Advanced Query Accelerator, this basically runs all the queries on the S3 and all the storage itself, which eliminates the need of being able to move the data from the network. So this is something that is also improvement in terms of Amazon, their own infrastructure, and how they are moving more efficiently, but it also directly hit on the customers. So data can be queried much more faster. And I think the best thing about this part is that's 100% compatible with Redshift. So you don't need to make any changes within your queries in order to actually use it. It's just a matter of turning on that flag. And yeah, it comes with all the acceleration of data compression and encryption, and it just basically a great way to actually query data without the need to move it to the compute, which is awesome. And the next thing they did is that with Redshift, we would like to run queries today and try to query different types of databases, and you need to have them all. For example, you're doing some business-related queries. What you will need to do is actually run ETL pipelines between different databases in order to get this data to your Redshift, and then you could run the query. So this new announcement just allows you to run queries across any systems. With Redshift, it's compatible with RDS and Aurora, and this allows you to combine live data with the data that you already have running in your data warehouse, which just is the way that you can run performance and queries on your business data. This is another example of how Redshift has become a very powerful tool, and I think the main point of all this announcement is to get people to adopt more Redshift, since it can be very powerful to run business-related data. And I think the more that more customers are using Redshift, are adding more and more data to their own system, so they need the tool that can allow them to actually run sophisticated queries. And with the Redshift Data Lake export, it's just a way to be able to save all the query results in S3 in formats like Parquet, And what you can do with this data later on, you can run it on any analytics tool, for example, like Athena, and run on that S3, and also be able to run much more complex queries on that data that you already exported from Redshift. And the next announcement is actually, I think it's a game changer, and in all that is considered today to be sort of like a marketplace of third-party data. So we have many people that need to purchase data from third-party APIs, and we have many providers that have their own data and they want to sell it. So today's sort of like an open market, and everyone does what he wants, and it can get very very complex when you think about securing your data and encrypting your data and having any compliance control. So what Amazon did is that they took control on that part, and they built AWS Data Exchange. This just allows you to find any third-party data on the cloud using the AWS marketplace, and this is pretty straightforward for providers themselves to reach, I think, millions of people without the need to start marketing their own data. It's all available there. So I think this is a very game changer for people that want to distribute data over the cloud, and also for consumers that actually want to use it. Yeah, those are my announcements for the analytics part.
Excellent, thank you very much. Next, we move on to application integration.
Great. So the first thing coming here is around step functions. I think they're great. They help you orchestrate different kind of scenarios or ETLs or pipelines very easily that someone else like AWS manages. But we found out throughout the time that it's really hard to scale for a very high concurrent ones. I'm talking about very, very high concurrent ones, like 100K per second or concurrent ones. And sometimes you need a very simple workflow, pretty basic ETL at a very high scale, which run pretty short. And it wasn't very cost effective with step functions because the pricing was it didn't give any pricing to scalability or to the duration of the workflow itself, but rather to the number of workflows. So here we got step functions express workflows. As it may sound, it's a bit more simple kind of workflow designed for short duration workflows under 5 minutes, which is actually a pretty good number because you can do a lot in a 5 minutes workflow. The concurrency improved drastically. It means that you can run as much as 100K workflows concurrent. And the main game changer here is the cost effectiveness of that. Pricing reduced dramatically for step function express workflows. Next, we got the EventBridge schema registry. So EventBridge itself, it's pretty new. I think it was announced maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It allows sharing some kind of event bus between different services or between partners and AWS services to your code, to your services. So a few things that they've announced on here. So first of all is the ability to get this kind of events that are being streamed on this event bus, the EventBridge. First of all, integrated to our IDEs, currently to VS Code and IntelliJ, and also generate the code bindings for Java, Python, and TypeScript. It means that it's easier to work with it. It's easier to understand what kind of messages do you get, what are the options, and see it as an integrated part of our IDE. Also, another cool feature is the schema discovery that you can just turn on. It's obviously cost a bit more money, and it's not something that you would turn on forever. But if you turn it on for maybe couple minutes, it just scans all kind of messages, all kind of options and values that can be created there, and generate this kind of schema for you. So it's much more helpful for understanding what kind of traffic do you see in this event bus. And also you got some predefined schemas from partners or AWS services that you can read, somewhat like a marketplace for schema that you can sign up for. Next one is the mobile, which also got some really cool features. One of the most significant ones for this reInvent, I think, was the HTTP APIs for API Gateway. As you think of it, and I think anyone can relate to that, API Gateway was too fully featured for most of the use cases and a bit expensive than what we expect for a high-scale endpoint. And that's exactly where Amazon hit us. A much more simple API Gateway, much better performance at a fraction of the cost. So today, if you'll get the new HTTP APIs, it just have a basic integration into either Lambda or another HTTP as a proxy. The performance will be improved to less than 10 milliseconds, which is much better than today's performance. It got no extra features like all the rest of the things that we know of. It's a pretty straightforward API. And cost reduction is amazing. From $3.5 per million requests, it down to $1 per million requests, and even less than that if you're having more and more queries. So this is super fantastic for everyone that is using API Gateway. And another thing in the mobile, so we already discussed about Amplify. Another great thing that really abstracts our way in handling mobile applications or applications in general today is the Amplify data store. As you know, when you're working with a live data coming from your server, sometimes your connection is being lost. Sometimes there is updates being done on the web or the server side that the clients need to get pushed to that. And you need to maintain some sort of a different store that you control on your own, and you need to synchronize it with the server and being able to do delta or auto merge between differences. Here, really, AWS removed all the hassles that we got here. So data store is another built-in thing to the Amplify SDK. It means that you get out of the box this kind of local storage that continuously syncs up against the server, find conflicts, auto-merge them, sync them. And again, it's powered by part of AppSync and GraphQL. So again, another abstraction layer for any kind of developer experience.
Okay, finally, I think this is the last category, security, identity, and compliance. And we've just got a couple of announcements here. Firstly, the IAM Access Analyzer. Now, this follows on from the previous point I made earlier when I was talking about the S3 Access Analyzer, as it's very much the same thing, but for IAM. They're both designed to identify potential security risks through overly permissive policies. However, the IAM Access Analyzer looks at policies within roles and will identify any risks where access has been granted from outside of your own AWS account. Again, you will be presented with a list of findings for you to review and make any adjustments to policies as you see fit. And again, it's a very useful feature as a safety check to ensure that you have not inadvertently left access open from another account that should not be there. A great design feature of the IAM Access Analyzer is that it allows you to see when the role was last accessed on any given IAM policy in the findings. So you can easily identify and remove unused permissions, helping you to ensure that you are performing housekeeping on your roles and policies. Some of the most common security breaches are made through old and unused policies being left unmonitored. So this should help to resolve such issues where access is allowed from outside of your own account in this instance. And then finally, Amazon Detective. This service is used to help identify the root cause of potential security breaches by enabling you to dive deeper into your service logs, thanks to machine learning coupled with statistical analysis and graph theory to construct a dataset identifying where an issue might be located much faster than previously possible with existing AWS services. There are, of course, many other AWS services that are already being used to help you conduct and identify potential security weaknesses and threats, such as Amazon Macy, Amazon Guard Duty, and of course the AWS Security Hub. However, Amazon Detective now provides a means of investigating these issues at a far greater level, enabling you to pinpoint exactly where an issue might be originating from. It can analyze literally trillions of events from all different logs, such as your CloudTrail logs or your VPC flow logs, and also any findings from Amazon Guard Duty as well. And then these are displayed in a set of results in a behavior graph, allowing you to understand the interactions between them. And this helps you, again, to identify the root cause of any security risk you might have. So in a nutshell, Amazon Detective is a great way to triage security findings, conduct incident investigation, and perform proactive threat hunting within your infrastructure. So I think that's brought us to the end of a number of announcements. I think there's approximately 30. So thanks everyone for those insights. I just have a quick question to each of you. Which was your kind of favorite announcement from reInvent this year?
I think I'll start. I do have some interesting ones, actually some that we haven't mentioned. And I think there's a website that you can probably go through all the hundreds of releases and announcements that they've been, but we try to pick some of them. And it's actually, this one is part of Werner Vogel's keynote, where they gave us some intro to how things working behind the scenes for them with Nitro and all the things, backend infrastructure stuff that they're running. One of them was the announcement for the EKS Fargate support, which they showed a really great example how EKS compared between Fargate and the regular instances really changes the game in terms of overscale and underscale. Like it quickly scales when you and very quickly downscale when you don't need extra instances. This was super amazing, and again, I think AWS really doing a great job in infrastructure work for all of us, so we won't need to handle all these kind of things.
Yeah, that is a good benefit.
Yeah, and I personally really like the provision concurrency for Lambdas, simply because cold start has been like something that all talk about and try to see how they can actually monitor that, and I know a lot of people actually been waiting for such a solution to be able to be sure that you can use Lambda, because Lambda is so easy to use and it's going to accelerate your developer velocity once you develop that. But when it comes with a price that you don't really know, that randomly sometime you're going to wait for cold start and you don't have a way to manage that. So that was a very huge pain for a lot of people that I know. And I really liked how they approached it with the provision concurrency. It's something I've been waiting for a while.
For a long time. How about from yourself, Matt?
Sure. So, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the most impactful update released this year, but, coming from a developer background, my personal favorite thing to come out this year was CoGuru. I'm very excited about that. Just having the benefit of being able to, lean on the mistakes already made and the hard lessons already learned by, dozens or hundreds or thousands of developers before me, all powered by a machine learning, easily automated environment in AWS is just going to be fantastic. I think it's going to speed up a lot of workflows. I think it's going to lead to, hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of better code in the long run for many, many companies. I'm thrilled to get to work with CoGuru.
Nice. Well, I hope going forward, leading into 2020, Matt, that you can create some labs on CoGuru and many of the other services we've already discussed. So, I mean, I certainly look forward to creating. Yeah, I certainly look forward to creating a number of courses on a lot of these announcements leading into 2020. So please keep a lookout for any new labs and new courses that are focused on the services that we mentioned today. We've got a couple of other questions if you guys got time. Firstly, how can you configure the provisioned concurrency for Lambda?
So this one is a pretty basic one. As I mentioned, you don't need to do anything in terms of the code change. And the way it works, if you'll get into the AWS console right now, you'll be able to see another section called provision concurrency under your Lambda console. In order to configure that, you need to set up a specific version of your Lambda. So if you're running on the default settings, it means that you're running on latest. In order to run provision concurrency, you need to create a specific version of your function. Again, it can be the latest one, but it just needs to be versioned. And then you can just control it. You can define as many as you want. For example, one provision concurrency or 100 or as many as you want. Once you do that, it takes some time to spin them up. It takes roughly between, 30 seconds to 60 seconds to take all of them up, and then they're hyper ready for your request. Also, once you're doing it, you're getting a new kind of metric, actually some new metrics, but the most important one to watch is the provision concurrency utilization. It tells you on a scale like percentage from 0 to 100 at any time frame how much of your provision concurrency was being utilized. So hopefully you want to get close to 100, but not 100, because then it means that you're doing not the provision concurrency. And on the other end, you don't want to be on the 0 side, because it means that you're not utilizing nothing from the provision concurrency. So it's pretty simple.
Okay, thank you. We've got just another couple of questions. Next, that's come in, is the RDS proxy easy to set up when working with Lambda functions?
Yeah, so basically, if you want to get started with the Amazon RDS proxy, it's just a matter of a couple of clicks. It's really easy to just go to your existing RDSs and just tap the flag on enabling and creating a proxy. And so the RDS proxy actually simplifies the way that you need to manage any connection pools or things like that, but it's also much easy to set up. So if you have currently Lambda functions that are communicating with the RDS, you can just go and delete all the code that handles all the connections, and instead of using your current RDS endpoint, you just point it to the proxy one, and everything just works seamlessly.
Excellent, thank you. And one final question, I think this one might be heading your direction, Matt. How does Amazon CoGuru Profiler work?
Oh, fantastic. I get to talk about CoGuru already. Awesome. Okay, so, I don't think we explained it well enough, but CoGuru is two kind of separate features. So there's CoGuru Reviewer and CoGuru Profiler. Reviewer is the one that's going to look at your source code and give you recommendations there. Profiler is the part of CoGuru that's going to run in your production application and give you recommendations there. So the way it works is it's got three different pieces. There's an agent, the profiler service, and the intelligent recommendation service. So the agent is just an in-process thread that you'll install as part of your application, which takes data from your instances and sends that to the profiler every 5 minutes, which will aggregate that data and then send it on to the intelligent recommendation piece. And that intelligent recommendation piece is going to be the part that'll it'll give you interactive flame graphs that you can use to visualize the performance of your application, and then also scan that data and gives you, proactive best practice alerts and recommendations on what to do with your code.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matt. So that now brings us to the end of the webinar. There's no more questions that have come in. So just a couple more points from myself. Everyone will receive a copy of this webinar as soon as it becomes available. I just want to thank everyone for joining today, and obviously to all the panelists, Ran, Hen, and Matt. It's been great speaking to you guys and getting an insight on some of the announcements that you are kind of interested in. So thank you very much for that. And finally, I think this is my last webinar of the year. So to everyone, the panelists, and also everyone listening, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'll speak to you all again soon. Any final words from anyone else?
No, this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.